Time again for Doc Jacques, your Addiction Lifeguard podcast. I am Dr. Jacques de Bruckert, a psychologist, licensed professional counselor, and addiction specialist. If you are suffering from addiction, misery, trauma, whatever it is, I'm here to help. If you're in search of help to try to get your life back together, join me here at Doc Jacques, your Addiction Lifeguard, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. I wanted to be real clear about what this podcast is intended for. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes, but not considered help. If you actually need real help and you're in need of help, please seek that out. If you're in dire need of help, you can go to your nearest emergency room, or you can check into a rehab center or call a counselor like me and talk about your problems and work through them. But don't rely on a podcast to be that form of help. It's not. It's just a podcast. It's for entertainment and information only. So let's keep it in that light, all right? Have a good time, learn something, and then get the real help that you need from a professional. Why do addicts use? Why do they have to use to get out of their brains? Why is that? I get asked that question all the time. I get asked that question by people who are in recovery when they've gotten through the whole cycle of addiction. I get asked that by family members of people who are addicts and are confused by what they're seeing. I get asked that by people who are at the early stages of recovery and they just can't figure out why they can't stop, and it doesn't make any sense to them. I get asked by people that question all the time, literally all the time. It's almost a daily event. And the answer that I give is always the same. It's because that person is uncomfortable. And there's a series of videos that I ask people to watch sometimes. It's called the Soft White Underbelly. And it's real people being interviewed for 30 minutes, 40 minutes about their tragic lives. And the videos, sometimes they're in black and white, sometimes they're in color. And the ones that are the interviews, and they're on YouTube, by the way. So it's called the Soft White Underbelly. And they're interviews of just a person. They're just being interviewed about their life. And they could be a prostitute, they could be a drug addict, could be somebody who's, a drug dealer. This guy will literally pull people off the street, ask them if they want to just come in and can be interviewed about their lives. And he sits them in a chair, in a stool, in a studio, and they just tell their lives. And it's really interesting when you watch, and they're pretty compelling stories. I mean, it's just, and a lot of times you can tell they're just very uncomfortable. A lot of times they just don't want to be participating in this interview. They're just feeling very uncomfortable. And so they're asked these questions about, how did you get here? What happened to you? How do you live now? And it's really interesting because I can see that they, when they started off, you can tell that there was always this traumatic experiences that they had. Usually their childhoods. If they talk about their childhoods, they'll say it was really bad, and they'll go into detail about it. But what's really interesting is the amount of trauma that these people have experienced in their lives is always, it's just off the scales. And so they got derailed, right? And then one thing led to another, and it led to another. Tragedy upon tragedy, homelessness, getting assaulted, having to, you have no money, so you end up prostituting yourself or, stealing or whatever the case is. But it's always it's just incredible amount of discomfort and tragedy and horror that they're describing. And that's what comes into me when I'm treating people. The person that comes in, they always have these just horrific stories of just tragedy. And it's heartbreaking many times, the stories that they tell. And it's interesting because they tell them with a level of dissociation, right? The disconnect, in order to understand that what they're telling is perhaps not their story. They have to get into that place in their head where they're talking about it's almost like they're talking about somebody else, right? I mean, there's a level of dissociation that has to occur in order for them to be able to survive in that world that they were in. And it's like it's like it was somebody else. And it's at first I thought it was kind of an apathetic approach, that they were feeling this apathy, this lack of feeling about their own tragedy. But then I realized that's purposeful, right? They are trying very hard not to feel the pain that has been inflicted upon them, and the only way they can do that is to describe it as if it's somebody else. I've heard the same thing from women who have been in my office who are they're in the porn industry, and they talk about the things that they're doing for money, and they connect to themselves when they're telling the story. Yes, this is what happens, but they give the person that's doing doing the act as somebody else. That's a different person. They use like a stage name, right? Well, that stage name takes on a persona, and it's not them. That's how they approach it. Like, it's not me. It's Cherry Delight or whatever their name is they've given themselves when they're engaging in these acts. And it's a way of dissociating. It's a coping skill that we learn as children, the little fantasy world. Unfortunately, as adults, it becomes problematic, because living in a fantasy world and having a fantasy identity when you're a full-grown adult and supposed to be functioning in society is not helpful at all. It makes you dysfunctional. But the push and pull of that dissociation, the push and pull of discomfort, is what people who have addiction engage in. And so if you are a loved one and you're watching somebody that's engaging in nonsensical use of drugs and alcohol, and it doesn't make any sense to you, it's like, why don't you just stop? Well, they can't, right? They're trying to not feel discomfort, and that's the best way they've come up with. So whatever it is, huffing paint, shooting up, drinking, pornography, gambling, shopping, you go through the whole list of addictive things that you do. But what you're doing is you're trying to not feel discomfort. So to me, what's kind of an interesting thing is trying to teach people how to sit with their discomfort. It's very difficult for them to do that. Many times, the trauma that they've experienced, as you probably, if you're listening to this, you probably have that. It's so overwhelming, right? It's not just I flunked out of school. It's my nephew or not nephew probably, but like uncle was molesting me, or my aunt was beating me, or my mom put cigarettes out on my arm and used to punch me. And these are just really severe things. Now, you may have not suffered that level of trauma that was severe like that, but one person's trauma is another person's tolerable. So you may not have been affected by a heavy amount of trauma, seemingly, but it doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic to you. My family, I had trauma going on. There was a lot of verbal and emotional abuse that was heaped on me by my father. My mother was physically beating my sister, and that was unknown to me. I never ever saw it. And my sister could describe in graphic detail the things of, the beatings, slapping. She even broke my sister's collarbone at one point when she was 3. And so it's a terrible thing when you suffer in emotional abuse, but it leaves no scars. Verbal abuse, it leaves no scars. Physical abuse sometimes can leave no scars. Getting punched or kicked may not leave a bruise, but it definitely is inflicting pain. So it doesn't have to be something that's completely visible. So you feel uncomfortable because you were traumatized. Combat vets get traumatized. People who are first responders get exposure trauma or direct trauma through dealing with victims of car accidents and whatever. So it just takes all kinds of different forms. So you feel uncomfortable, and now you can't offload that discomfort. Many times people can't really talk about it. They're not in a place where they can. Police, first responders, EMS people, they talk to themselves. They talk amongst themselves, but they don't talk to the outside world. So then you have the red wall or the blue wall, the wall of protection around a police officer that makes it impossible for him to or her to talk to the general public, and then the general public becomes unrelatable. And unfortunately with police officers, there's also a high degree of suspicion that people have in society of them, and they treat them differently. So it's like as soon as you put on a uniform, you get treated differently, and that separates you from the regular general population, which is unfortunate because police officers are usually very good, kind people. They just are separated from society through their own doing and through society's doing as well. So when you're feeling uncomfortable, you want to get high, you want to get drunk, you want to, offload that feeling, but you can't. So what you do is you try to alter it. So the answer of why are people using it is because they're uncomfortable. Why can't they do something else? Because other things they tried didn't work. That's what it comes down to. Now, if you have a situation where you have a drug of choice going into it and you get traumatized, then you're just going to, start overusing that drug of choice. But many times it's the person gets exposed to the drug of choice and now you've instantly got an addict and off to the races you go. But the push and pull of trauma, or discomfort rather, the push and pull of discomfort is interesting because there are times when you get through your day as an addict and you can tolerate the discomfort. Maybe it's because there's so much noise going on around you. So you're at work or you're at school or you're around a lot of people, friends, family, whatever. And there's a lot of commotion. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of stimulus going on around you. It tends to drown out that low-level hum in the background of that discomfort. So you get distracted from it because there's so much going on around you. I noticed that people, when they get high, get drunk, they tend to isolate. That was my thing, right? Isolate and then get drunk. What's the isolation about? And the isolation is where the push comes. So you isolate because you're starting to feel uncomfortable, but you don't want to be around people because you don't want to have to explain anything. So then you tend to isolate even more, and that's when you start using. So people who are addicts, they do their best usage when they're by themselves. That's when they turn into the professionals. And that's the time that you are very definitely going to be actively engaged in your addiction at a much higher level, right? I mean, you're going to be using more. You're going to drink more. You're going to shoot up more. You just want more. And what happens in your head is you start really focusing on those things that are uncomfortable. So I'm always very concerned when I hear that somebody is isolating frequently and they're an addict. To me, that's like, they're probably using a lot, and it's for extended periods of time. So somebody who doesn't have a job or somebody who's not going to school, they're living by themselves, they're just kind of isolating. In that way, there's too much time going on. What happens when you're trying to get through that? What do? Like, we put you in a rehab. And for some, it seems like, I'm being imprisoned. When in fact, you're not actually being imprisoned. What's happening is we're putting you in with other people. And people will come into rehab and they're very uncomfortable because they're around people they don't know. And they can't be by themselves a whole lot. It's very limited, the time that you can be by yourselves. And they get checked on all the time. That's the other thing. There's room checks, right? So in the middle of the night, you're going to come in and check on you and see if you're doing okay. And when you're in the process of going through rehab, what are we doing? We're doing groups. We're doing process groups. We're doing AA groups or NA groups. We're doing yoga. We're doing meditation groups. Everything's a group. And that's because we're trying to teach people to not get in their own heads too much, right? There's a lot of sharing. So we'll sit in a group and ask to participate. and be called on to participate. That's the other thing, is like, it's a little uncomfortable because it's not like AA where you can just sit there the whole time and not say anything and get up and leave at the end. In a process group and rehab, you don't do that. You actually get asked to speak. You're told to speak, right? What's on your mind. So being in a group is helpful because it changes the isolation thing, but it doesn't change the discomfort. What does change the discomfort? What is the thing that breaks through the discomfort and makes it so that you can tolerate comfortable? That's the pull. And the pull is the thing that pulls you out of discomfort. Or in full recovery, we just learn to be able to tolerate discomfort, which is not a skill set that addicts have. So being able to tolerate uncomfortable, how do you get there? I have people practice experiencing it in smaller portions. The feeling of discomfort can be so overwhelming. It's like, it's kind of like one of those white noise machines. It's in the background that you're still able to talk over it. And then as the discomfort gets more intense, that white noise gets so loud that it's like you're in a room and there's a jet going on. There's a jet airplane starting up right next to you and you can't talk. It's just so overwhelming. You can't tolerate it. So I have them practice being in discomfort, being uncomfortable in a short duration. So maybe 5 minutes or 8 minutes or 10 minutes, where you can sit and you can actually feel your feelings. That's what we call processing, right? Processing is just feeling your feelings. That's another term for feeling your feelings. So you process it. Now, sometimes, I'll have them come into my office and we will talk about the feeling that they're having. Like, what is it? You're uncomfortable. Can you tell me why? What's going on? How's this? How are you experiencing this? What's happening? And they talk about it. Now, the point is not to make them feel worse. I'm not going to get all Dr. Phil on them and have them talk about their problems and cut to the commercial and there's no resolution to anything. It's, no, describe it to me. Like, what's happening? Because I want them to be present with it. And I'm checking to make sure that they're having an appropriate response. If you're describing it in that weird, disconnected, disinterested, third-party description of what's happening, that's you dissociating. If you can't get through the description, that's too overwhelming. So you either go, you're underwhelmed or you're overwhelmed. There's a happy medium between them. It's just, tell me the story, tell me what's happening, like, tell me what you're thinking about. And then I let them do that for 5 minutes, even if they just give me like 2 sentences, but I'll give them 5 minutes in that discomfort. And then we will change the subject. We'll move away from it. Then I'll ask them, 10 minutes later, like, so when you were feeling uncomfortable, how are you feeling now? Are you feeling still uncomfortable with what you were describing, or is it less? And if it's less, that's great. That's not the point, to get them to feeling it less, but I want to know that they've backed off from it a bit. So they've been able to experience feeling uncomfortable in the presence of another person and then come back from that discomfort in the presence of another person and get nothing from that person. In other words, I'm not rejecting what they're doing. I'm not telling them they shouldn't be feeling that way. I'm not telling them that they should feel a different way. I'm not trying to distract them when they're in that discomfort. I'm just letting them experience discomfort. And they get through it, right? They get through the discomfort and they realize that, okay, I guess I can describe it and it's okay on the other side. And they didn't use, and they're back. Like, it's like they're there, they're uncomfortable, and then they're back. If you can practice that slowly over time, like in these small durations, the discomfort becomes less impactful on you. And that is the pull, right? I'm pulling away from the discomfort. I'm pushing into it, then I'm pulling away from it. Being able to tolerate discomfort is a skill. I think it's a skill that you practice. At least that's my opinion. Now, you may have a different opinion about it, but that's my opinion. The skill of the push and pull of discomfort is learning how to embrace the discomfort and tolerate it. There are things in the medical community when we're describing, when we're doing a nurse diagnosis, for example, somebody who's a nurse will ask questions about, are you washing your face? Are you showering? Are your clothes clean? Do you clean your clothes? Do you brush your teeth? Are you eating regular? These are called the activities of daily living, the ADLs. When somebody is not engaging in their ADLs, we know there's an issue. There's something going on. Now, we don't know what it is, but it's an indicator of something. So we've diagnosed that the person is not engaging in their ADLs, and then we have to look at causes. That's like the definition of addiction right there, is like there are no ADLs going on. They kind of fall away. And it's the discomfort thing. So what I'm looking for are you able to engage in the ADLs? And then are the everyday misery, is that something you can tolerate? Everyday misery is you go out to get in your car to go to work and you got a flat tire. Or you were planning on having dinner with some friends and you got sick and you can't go. Or you wanted to go to the movies and you got some friends, you went to the movies and they were sold out and you couldn't go. That's called everyday misery. Tolerance for everyday misery goes down exponentially if you are prone to intolerance of discomfort in general. And addicts, that would be the excuse for the addict to say, hey, well, we couldn't do that, so let's go drink. Because I really was looking forward to the movie and I can't do it. And I can't say that. And I don't know how to process that. So everyday misery tolerance goes down too. Practicing being able to withstand uncomfortable in short durations and progressively over time, weeks, months, you learn how to tolerate discomfort more and more. And that is what recovery is about. If you have a horribly traumatic childhood, you feel horrible in relationships and you have all those relational dysfunctions and personal habits that are coping mechanisms, all that stuff. So when you have those and they're fully present in your life and taking over, you're probably going to end up engaging in your drug of choice. If you can work through those things through a therapeutic process with a therapist, and you can relearn how to tolerate discomfort and work through the traumas that you experience through EMDR or visualization techniques or attachment theory approach to treating how, engage in relationships and change, whatever it is, whatever the therapeutic process you use. If you can do that, engage in a therapeutic process with a licensed, trained therapist who specializes in that kind of work, and you work on the a little bit of exposure therapy, I suppose. You're exposing yourself to some discomfort and coming out on the other side feeling okay. You're pushing into it, then you're pulling away from it, and you learn how to do that. You will start your path of recovery. I'm always very, very concerned about my clients who just cannot tolerate discomfort and they will not try to change that. I'm very concerned for them because I know that it's going to be very difficult for them to stop using a coping mechanism or even trying to find a replacement coping mechanism because they're going to go to what works. That's what they think. This works. It never works as good as it did the first time, obviously, but it works sort of. And so I'm very concerned about them until they start exposing what's making them uncomfortable. What is it that's making you so uncomfortable? What happened to you? And it's the what happened to you that will lead you to the path of recovery. So, fearlessly and bravely, with courage and certainty, moving into a therapeutic process for recovery is not about not using your drug of choice. It's about healing from the traumas that you have and learning how to tolerate discomfort in a much healthier fashion. So what I want you to do is I want you to work on that and try to see if you can get into the presence of somebody else, and preferably a therapist, and practice that. Working on feeling comfortable when you're uncomfortable. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Doc Jacques, your addiction lifeguard. I am Dr. Jacques Brucker. Doc Jacques, your addiction lifeguard on the beach of potential misery, but I'm here to help rescue you from all that misery. Listen, if you're having problems with addiction and addiction-related stuff, go get help. Don't risk your life to save your addiction. That's insanity. So get the help. Go to rehab, get a therapist, go to the rooms, and go to AA or NA or any of the A's and get some help. But don't destroy yourself. And if you like this episode of Doc Jacques, your addiction lifeguard, subscribe, like, and tell a friend. You can also comment. But until next time, this is Doc Jacques, your addiction lifeguard, saying, see ya.